If there's one thing we could associate with the man behind the incredible companies such as SpaceX and Tesla, it's his wit and sense of humor. As much as he is recognized and lauded for his innovations, Elon already has a sense of humor which allows him to navigate questions with ease. And that quality is at the most obvious when he is dealing with hostile journalists. In these clips, you can see how much pride he takes in his work, as well as how humble he is when it comes to taking credit. Rather than calling his meteoric rise a product of good business acumen or simply his own genius, Elon went ahead and said that the secret behind his success is that he works hard. This might sound cliched, but he has the results to back up his claims.
How have you done this? These projects are so... These PayPal, SolarCity, Tesla, SpaceX, they're so spectacularly different. They're such ambitious projects at scale. How on earth has one person been able to innovate in this way? What is it about you?
I don't know, actually. I don't have a good answer for you. I work a lot. I mean, and a lot.
Are you sleeping? You're not sleeping a lot, right?
Oh, geez, do I look that bad?
No.
Talk us through this. What are we looking at here?
Yeah, so this is one of our rocket boosters coming back from very high and fast in space. I think, yeah. Yeah.
So that was a sped up.
That's the slowed down version. Yeah.
Like, I thought you were joking.
Yeah, it was. I was joking, but...
What sets Elon apart is his ability to judge a problem and propose feasible and cost-effective solutions. That was what set SpaceX apart from the competition. And when a reporter talked to him about the proposed reliance on solar power not being feasible in densely packed cities like Hong Kong, Elon accepted the downsides, but reiterated that the existing infrastructure could accommodate solar farms inland feeding into the established power transmission systems.
You're also the chairman of SolarCity, building out a network of solar panels and solar systems. And I can see why solar can make sense in a place like California, where it's sunny all the time, homes are big, a lot of roof space, you can lay out all the solar panels. But in a place like Hong Kong, densely packed, vertical cities, how can solar make sense here?
Yeah, I think it's true that in dense cities, rooftop solar is not going to solve the energy need. But what you can do is have ground mount solar power, let's say near Hong Kong, tapping into the existing power lines that are coming in. So you can supply Hong Kong with solar power. We just need to be coming from a land area that's not too far away. And I mean, it's worth noting, certainly, China has actually an enormous land area, much of which is hardly occupied at all. Given that the Chinese population is so concentrated along the coast, once you go inland, the population in some cases is remarkably tiny. So you could easily power all of China with solar.
All of China with solar?
Easily, yeah. Yeah, no, easy.
The world's most populous country.
Yep, definitely.
It has been a dream of humanity to explore the vastness of interstellar space. We went to the moon in 1969 and haven't stopped looking at the skies with curiosity since then. While some of us just look at the heavens in wonder, there are those who believe that the future of humanity lies beyond Earth, and eventually, with the situation on planet Earth degrading each day, humanity will have no choice but to venture forth and colonize other planets. Elon has repeatedly said that he believes in this dream. In fact, one of the primary motivators behind his establishment of the Falcon rocket and SpaceX was this. He explained in detail what he thinks is the timeline we have to follow to achieve a permanent human presence on Mars. This is an interview you don't want to skip.
Elon, you've been very vocal about the possibilities of colonizing other planets, specifically Mars, and your own company is doing a lot of work to get us to the stage where we're able to do that. Do you think that starting a colony on Mars would kind of be a chance to start over and maybe do a little bit better? Or do you think it's a chance to copy what nature on Earth has already created for us?
Yeah, I think it's quite likely that we'd want to bioengineer new organisms that are better suited to living on Mars. I mean, humanity's kind of done that over time by sort of selective breeding. Cows didn't evolve in the wild, but that's a very slow process, requires hundreds of generations, whereas I think with actual bioengineering, you could make that happen a lot faster, maybe with more precision. Ideally, long term, although this is a tricky subject, you'd want to write genetics.
What do you mean by that?
Meaning you'd want to create synthetic organisms.
Completely synthetic organisms?
Not necessarily completely, but start with some base and then modify stuff.
In the interest of colonization of other planets, are you relying on the research of government-funded space programs on the effects of, being in space for long periods of time, or does SpaceX have any interest in doing its own research?
Well, I think the verdict is in with respect to long-term existence in space, really mostly about zero-G. In my opinion, it is certainly.
Defining long-term, too.
Well, certainly more than enough to get to Mars.
Okay.
Mars is, if you have a low energy trajectory, like minimum energy trajectory, it's about 6 months. I think that can be compressed down to about 3 months. And it gets exponentially harder as you go lower than that, 3 to 4. And it's important to actually be at that level because then you can send your spaceship to Mars and bring it back on the same orbital synchronization. So Earth and Mars sync up every 2 years, and then they're only kind of in sync for about 6 months. So and then they're really too far apart. So you've got to be able to go there and back in one go, and that's important for making the cost of traveling to Mars an affordable amount. Because if you think of what's the key thing to establish a colony on Mars, it's the cost per unit mass to the surface of Mars, or the cost per person as well. At a certain level, if it's too high, obviously there won't be such a thing. But once it gets to a certain level, it will it's like a reaction. The activation energy is sort of like the economic activation energy of a Martian colony. Right now it's like I don't know. If the last NASA estimate was $500 billion, and that was during Bush the First. So I would imagine today's estimate is $1 trillion. Now we're not going to go spend $1 trillion on sending 4 people to Mars. So right now the cost of going to Mars is beyond what can be afforded. So that's why there's no one's going to Mars. But ultimately, in order to establish a colony, I think you've got to get the cost down to maybe $500,000 or less per person to go. And there's got to be an intersection of sets of people that can afford to go and people that want to go.
It's obvious by now that humanity cannot keep consuming fossil fuels indefinitely. Despite all the claims by the oil and gas giants, it is apparent to everyone that we have a question of when instead of if. And this is the point Elon Musk reinforced when talking to a room full of oil and gas giants. While he accepted that our reliance on fossil fuels right now is in need and shutting all operations down abruptly would only cause harm, it has become necessary for the world to go ahead and wean itself off this reliance before it becomes a liability. The point is that fossil fuels will end eventually. That is a certainty. But in the form of the sun, we have a near inexhaustible supply of power. So the sensible course of action is to accelerate our transition while we can afford to.
What kind of a threat do you think you are to the oil and gas industry?
Well, I don't think we're much of a threat. Yet. Yet. The more obvious threat is that we're going to run out of hydrocarbons to mine and burn. That's rather obvious. It's
no time soon, judging from the comments we've had this morning.
So it's getting harder and harder to find hydrocarbons, and it's getting much more expensive to extract them. Really, we're just arguing about the when hydrocarbons run out or become prohibitively expensive, not if. I don't think there's anyone here who would say it's an if, not a when.
You are, a tech guy, right? You're a physicist and an engineer. You call yourself the chief architect of companies.
I tend to view things from
You don't
sort of
think
a
that
physics
human
standpoint.
ingenuity and technology and resourcefulness will mean that we will still have abundant fossil fuels
No, of course
available?
not.
This has been going on for some time. They think you've reached the boundaries, and yet they find more. And look at the whole shale gas revolution.
There are time extensions on the game, but the game is going to come to an end. That should be absolutely certain, obviously, frankly. But I don't have any
I don't have any fundamental dislike of hydrocarbons. I simply look at the future and say, what is the thing that will actually work? And using a non-renewable resource obviously will not work. So we must find an alternative. But if there was a button I could press to stop all hydrocarbon usage today, I would not press it.
You would not press it?
Of course not.
You would not press it
would cause
because
human civilization to come to a halt.
every hospital would have to
That would
close
be
down.
ridiculous. So it would be irresponsible to press that button. But what does need to happen is to, if we can, accelerate the transition towards renewables. That's the sensible thing to do. You know, if you take, say, I'm going to use maybe two examples. Saudi Arabia, since the Saudi Aramco president spoke here, Saudi Arabia has an enormous amount of sunlight. And that will be there for billions of years, or at least 1 billion years until the sun eventually engulfs us, but 1 billion years, solid. So it seems that you know, investing in the solar resource is the thing that's really going to preserve the long-term future, not so much the oil and gas. I mean, that's a temporary thing. In the future, we'll look back, and by future, I'm not talking about super far in the future, I'm talking about towards the end of the century. We will look back on gasoline-powered cars the same way we look back on coal, as sort of a quaint anachronism that's in a museum.